Hi, this is Dustin with Dustin's Dollars. Today I'm going to be talking about Knightscope and specifically about the materials from their proxy statement for the upcoming annual meeting. And mostly this is going to be talking about the most important information is their 2022 proposed equity incentive plan. Before I begin, let me remind you that I am not a financial advisor or a financial professional of any sort. All opinions that I express in this video are mine and do not represent those of any company or any other individual. I currently hold a long position in Knightscope, so basically this video should be for entertainment purposes only, because I could be wrong about everything that I say in this video. You need to do your own research before making any investment decisions. So, if you are a Knightscope shareholder, or more to the point, were a shareholder on April 28th, 2022, you should have received a notification that, hey, you are entitled to vote for the proposals for the annual meeting, and that, by the way, is held on Thursday, June 23rd, at 9 a.m. Pacific, and it looks like you're going to be able to attend virtually. And they have the details here if you haven't seen it. What are they going to vote on here? And this I'll go over this just sort of briefly. They're going to actually elect their directors to the board that they have, that they proposed. They want to, and this is pretty standard, appoint their accounting firm. And then there's this one, which is to approve the Knightscope Inc. 2022 Equity Incentive Plan. And so that's going to be talking about here today, because that's really the only new piece of information that we got as part of these proxy materials. Most of this stuff was information that was already known. But I do want to go over a couple points here, because I think, if you are a voting shareholder, it is important for you to understand what is in this. Because it has implications for you. So the bottom line here is that this is outlining how much stock does the company have available to give to their employees and their directors as compensation, right? Meaning how much is their share-based compensation going to be, and more to the point, how much are you, the shareholder, being diluted so that they can pay their employees in lieu of cash. And so the bottom line here, if you scroll down to this 2022 Equity Incentive Plan, let's see if we can get to the beginning of it here. And I'll go through some of the salient details. Try to make it brief, because this can be pretty boring. So up front, they want shareholders to approve 5 million shares of Class A common stock, and which is quite a lot, right? That's, 30% of their outstanding Class A and Class B shares, and more like 10% of the fully diluted share count, maybe slightly less than 10%. And then this amount, then this is the part that really, where it really ratchets up, is the number of shares authorized for issuance increases every year by the lesser of 5% of their outstanding Class A and Class B common stock on December 31st the prior year, or a number of shares determined by the board or the compensation committee, right? So there's a compensation committee composed of some of the board of directors, which I have an opinion about, and just that I'll express later. But that's the gist here. Is it's 5 million shares to start with, plus unissued shares from the prior compensation plans, I think from 2016 to 2014, which I think I had it written down somewhere. I don't have it in my notes readily accessible. It's not a lot, but that they're actually going to then say, hey, not only do we want to approve 5 million shares right now, every year we're going to approve up to 5% of our outstanding shares at that point in time. And this, again, adds together the Class A and Class B shares. And it did state, as of April 21st, 2022, there were 24, I could probably find it. April 21st. Yeah. So they said there's about 24.25 million shares of Class A's, about 10.5 million shares of Class B. So that gets you to about, 34.8 million shares total. And so if we were looking at, 5% of that, that would be another 1.74 million shares that they could issue next year. This year, I guess I'm not 100% sure. I guess it would be this year, as the 2022 plan is going to be approved in 2022. which is a lot, right? And that's actually going to increase every single year. So every year you can expect up to 5% dilution in terms of, or just due to this sort of share-based compensation, at least being available to the plan, right? That's actually what I'm talking about here is an upper bound on the number of shares that they could possibly issue. And they go through some various details here saying that these shares could be issued as straight up shares. They could be options. They could be, was it share appreciation rights, which sounds, I don't have a direct experience with, sounds a lot like a stock option. So there's all these different aspects to it. One thing that was nice to see, because I was curious about this, is repricing. They made a statement here that they're not going to do any repricing of the options, and basically this is relevant, right? Because some of the directors do have options that were granted at strike prices higher than the current market price, and actually much higher. I think maybe if I recall correctly, I think the CFO has like 500,000 shares worth of stock options that were granted at like $8 a share. And since the stock is currently trading at about half of that, like those are underwater. But if this is in place, then they would not be repricing those to be lower. So the CFO has quite an incentive to get the share price back above that $8 amount. Couple other interesting things here. It did state that they have this eligibility, right? And they say who's eligible as of March 31st, 2022, approximately 60 employees. And then all of their non-employee directors, or 6 non-employee directors, which I think is all of them, are eligible, right? And so 60 employees, they only reported, I think, 55 at the end of 2021. So I'm assuming that's effectively everybody in the company. So they're going to be handing out shares as compensation to everybody. Or could. They're eligible for it, let's say. The one interesting thing that they did have in here somewhere is they said how much they did issue last year. Let me find that real quick. Yeah, so they said in 2021, we already know that they granted 1 million shares, options for 1 million shares to the executive officers, right? To the CFO and the chief counsel, I think is his position. But this is, I think, the first time that we've seen how much they gave to non-executives. And they gave roughly 1.4 million shares of Class A's to employees other than executive officers. So I thought that was interesting. I mean, that's a lot, right? If there were 55 total employees, I think was a number. And so subtract off 6 officers, that's 49 employees. So on average, their employees were getting 28, almost 29,000 shares, which seems like quite a chunk to me. Oops, not minus time. So if you multiply that by the price at the time of issuance, which would have been, let's say, let's just call it $10. They were issuing on average almost $300,000 per employee. Now it's hard to know whether these were all, sort of immediately vested, whether they actually just got the shares or whether these would have to vest over a certain period of time. Like maybe, yes, somebody might have been granted $300,000 worth of shares, or might have been granted, the roughly 30,000 shares, but those might only vest over a 4-year time period where they don't actually get all those shares until they've worked at the company for an additional 4 years. So it is hard to say. The number one question, all of this is talking about how many shares are available under the plan. But the number one question is how much are they actually going to dole out? And, this does give us some insight because that's what they doled out last year. And it is a little concerning if the share price is now, half of what it was last year, let's say. And, are they going to have to dole out twice the number of shares to match the same level of compensation? I hope not, as a shareholder, but we'll see. But the main question is, how much are they actually going to give out? And they basically copped out of giving anything here. They basically said that this section here where they said All the awards will be made at the discretion of the committee, and therefore the future benefits of an amounts that will be received or allocated to individuals under the 2022 plan are not determinable at this time. So basically, they're not telling us anything, and that's a little frustrating. It would be nice for them to have given something here, but like they're asking folks to approve this without really any guidance on how they plan to dole these shares out. So I'm not super thrilled about that personally. Now, if you do talk about, so I guess bottom line, this is going to be a lot of dilution for shareholders. The other bottom line, though, is, feel free to vote. I will be voting my shares. But I think insiders hold almost a majority, right? I think I've done the math in the past where insiders hold, something like 46% of the voting power of the company, mostly because of those Class B shares that they hold that are, worth sort of 10 times as much as the Class A shares. And so I'm not sure that really, I have to imagine they're going to pass whatever they want to pass because they do hold so many shares. But yeah, I mean, it is a little frustrating also that amount is, there's no real cap on the amount of shares, right? Because they just say, well, we'll add on 5% every year. And so that kind of gives them, if you think about the game theory of that gives them a bit of an incentive to dilute the company earlier on through other means, because that's a larger pool of shares that when they then get their 5%, that gets, tossed into this pool that could be handed out through the incentive program. They are looking at less future dilution. But we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. The one other thing of just, this is my personal opinion, it's a little unsatisfying that the compensation committee is, they basically say here, well, we're going to just award it out at the discretion of the compensation committee. And you look who's on the compensation committee, and it's 2 directors, and it really doesn't matter specifically who it is, because they do have the, I can't find it here. They do have a table to list it out. I think it's 2 of the directors, but none of the directors have actually put a single dollar into the company as far as I can tell. So it's a little bit frustrating as, a shareholder who has put money into the company to purchase my shares, that, the directors have not put any money. None of them have. And that's, that's just my own opinion, something I'm not thrilled about, but yeah, it is what it is. So hopefully that gave you some insight into what this is, and hopefully you are informed to vote the way that that you think makes sense. If you approve this or don't approve of it, please do go vote your shares. Yeah. Let's see, is there anything on the chat tonight? Nope, nothing on the chat. Just FYI, if you have been watching this far, I usually do these videos live. I usually do them at around about 10 or 11 p.m. Eastern US time, usually Sunday through Thursday evenings, Eastern US time. I'm not, I don't hit every night, but I do try, usually to do Sunday through Thursday nights. But that is everything I wanted to cover today. So thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.